Fanservice is a very broad term, but in essence, it means the inclusion of elements in a story that intend solely to please the audience in some superfluous way. The term originated from Japanese media and included stuff like beach or bath scenes intended to titillate the viewers. In the context of this video, however, I want to discuss fanservice in the way of callbacks to previous material, in specific, how Toby Fox added references to Undertale in Deltarune. In my opinion, the worst types of fanservice are those that are completely irrelevant to the main plot or actively get in the way of the story, as they often distract the player from the main focus of the narrative, or are just an annoyance to players who don't care about or recognize the references. However, in my opinion, Toby Fox doesn't fall into any of these trappings and does a fantastic job of integrating clever fanservice into Deltarune without it feeling too alienating or immersion breaking. In this video, I would like to go through different elements of fanservice employed by Toby Fox, and how he succeeds at both giving in to audience expectations in a respectful and meaningful way, as well as teasing them with the prospect of future content. But first, I know my upload schedule has been a bit, let's just say, rough for the past year or two, but I intend to start uploading more video essays more regularly this year. So if you want to be notified for future videos, be sure to subscribe. And while you're here, also be sure to like and comment your thoughts below. This is a very broad topic and I want to know what everyone thinks about fanservice in Deltarune. Do you like the references and callbacks? What callbacks do you want to see in future chapters? Anyway, let's get on with the video. The most base level of fanservice is simply giving the audience what they want, and there's one particular character that has this element in spades. No, not you. In Undertale, Gerson was an eccentric old historian who sold items to the human in his shop in Waterfall. Despite his small role in the story, he was implied to be incredibly powerful, having been known as the Hammer of Justice in his youth, and having trained Undyne before she became the Royal Guard captain. During the genocide route, he implies that he's aware of the fourth wall, and he all but states that he can't be harmed by the human as they can't start battles while in shop menus. As such, he has always been a beloved character who the community has always wanted an official battle against. My favourite aspect about Gerson's inclusion in Deltarune is that, while his appearance is extremely obvious fanservice, he is still so vital to the story that I can't see any other original character fulfilling his role as well as he does. In Deltarune, Gerson is dead. In Chapter 4 though, he is able to briefly come back to life in the Church's Dark World. In monster tradition, a monster's dust is to be spread over a beloved object, Gerson's being his hammer, with the object being buried. However, his son Alvin kept the hammer in a display case in his office. The implication is that if a deceased lightner or their object is in the vicinity of a dark fountain, that lightner can manifest as a darkner while still retaining their core traits. This makes for some interesting things to think about for future chapters. His first appearance to the three heroes in the Dark World uses the element of surprise very well, as I don't think that anyone would predict that this self-proclaimed old man would be a mentor figure for this Dark World. Even his regular motif is a riff on Undyne's Spear of Justice, or rather, should it be considered its precursor since Gerson was her mentor. Anyway, the lessons he imparts onto Susie about free will and her drive to break free of other people's control is genuinely very sweet and further her character development as she learns what it means to be her own individual. It also makes sense as when Gerson was alive, he was a very talented school teacher, so it tracks that he would have a mentor-mentee relationship with a troubled teenager, and continues to drive home the tragedy of his death and how he never got to meet Susie in the real world. Furthermore, when Susie creates her own dark fountain, she encounters a malicious version of Gerson, as some sort of zombie husk creature. This is after she discovers Gerson's identity in the real world and learns that he's dead, so this further emphasizes how dark worlds are built on personal perception. She learned that Gerson was deceased, so her envisagement of him is that of the undead. The battle against the Hammer of Justice is itself a form of fanservice, as it's the highly anticipated boss battle against Gerson, but also a super boss following Chapter 3 which arguably didn't have one at all. His battle theme, also called Hammer of Justice, takes heavy influence from Spear of Justice and Battle Against a True Hero, though in-universe he was probably the one who inspired the motifs for those tracks. The use of the freedom motif is also especially striking here, being much less prevalent than in the other fights that use it. I think it symbolizes that unlike Jevil and Spamton, who desired freedom from their restraints and the world at large, Gerson already knows that in death he's made peace with everything and everyone around him. making him the most free that he could ever be, and wishing to impart a sense of freedom upon others, like Susie. Overall, Gerson is a great example of delivering on what the audience wants to see in a way that not only fits into the narrative, but also enhances it by providing character development and some very interesting pieces of story progression. While delivering on what an audience craves is cool and all, sometimes it's not totally achievable. So when that happens, developers have to pivot and change up the formula to integrate welcome fanservice in unique ways. While there were a lot of cute fanservice-y moments in Chapter 1, it really ramped up in Chapter 2 with a certain boss fight, Spamton Neo. The original Metaton Neo in Undertale was, by all accounts, a complete joke, made both to show how powerful the human had become over the course of the game, and also to emphasize the scarcity of any real fun or challenge on the genocide route. As such, the idea of a fully fleshed out Metaton Neo battle was a very exciting concept for a lot of people, with plenty of fan games showing off what a potential fight could have been like had he not gone down in one hit. Toby himself was also interested in this idea. In an interview he had with Fangamer, he even posted a full version of Metaton Neo's hypothetical battle theme, Power of Neo, expressing his own intention of eventually giving his audience a true Neo fight. Of course, it would be very difficult to shoehorn Metaton into a battle in Deltarune, so Toby had to change courses and instead decided to implement Neo vicariously through the least expected option. Honestly, while playing Deltarune Chapter 2, did anyone genuinely expect the stumpy little salesman to be the character who ultimately fulfills the legacy of an unrealized boss fight? It still makes me so happy how clever of an homage it is to Undertale's Metaton Neo, soaring through a dark cityscape using the shooting mechanics of Undertale's Yellow Soul to take down a winged robot who claims to have an impenetrable defense. Even Spamton Neo's battle theme Big Shot makes numerous callbacks to Power of Neo and the leitmotifs of other ghost characters from Undertale. In that aforementioned Fangamer interview, Toby stated that he eventually retrofitted Power of Neo to fit with Spamton, creating Power of Spamton in the process. This track was essentially just Power of Neo but with a bit of a Spamton-esque twist along with a freedom motif. It makes sense why Toby decided to scrap this track and create Big Shot instead, a song that contains a lot of elements from Power of Neo but still feels more like its own unique thing. Simply mixing Power of Neo into Power of Spamton would have made the callback far too on the nose, and I think the noisy disorder of Big Shot fits much better with Spamton's personality than the much more repetitive Power of Spamton. Another thing I love about the whole Spamton Neo fight is that Toby Fox can integrate these fan service moments into the narrative without them coming off as too much like he's pandering to his audience. While it may seem contrived as to why a Neo robot was in Queen's basement, there is actually a very good explanation. After defeating Spamton, revisiting Swatch will reveal new dialogue where he talks about helping a Lightner design the body. That robot was the embodiment of a Lightner's dream, a dream I helped create once. Splashing colour from the motion of their hand, the Lightner filled it with their own hope, giving it incredible power. But in the end, nothing ever came of it, and it was left in the basement with the rest of the corrupted data. The Lightner mentioned here is all but stated to be Metaton, who probably designed the robot body on one of the library computers but eventually discarded it, leaving it to rust away in the depths of the PC database. Furthermore, the visual design of the Neo suit is thematically fitting for both characters in very different ways. For Metaton Neo, it's a show of power, a demonstration of Alphys' genius in designing the ultimate human killing machine. The angular armor and extruding shoulder pieces clearly evoke the appearance of Undyne the Undying, and the wide wings add extra imposing size to Metaton's otherwise slim frame. And yet, he goes down in one hit with no fanfare. In the end, he was just a lot of style with no substance to back it up. In contrast, Spamton Neo's design is garish and crudely coloured, which makes sense since Metaton probably drew it in like 20 minutes on MS Paint. Despite this, however, Spamton Neo is actually a real threat and can actually, fight back. I also like how the wires recontextualize this design. Spamton Neo is a puppet controlled by some unknown being high above, and his wings evoke the idea of an angel at the mercy of a heavenly deity. Seeing as a core part of the Deltarune prophecy revolves around the banishment of the angel's heaven, that makes complete sense. Overall, Spamton Neo is an excellent example of how Toby can give in to audience demand in a way that remains well written, well integrated into the story, and a welcome surprise for the audience. Finally, sometimes you want some fanservice that doesn't simply call back to previous source material, but rather pictures things in a self-aware way. This type of fan service is a lot more comedic and tongue-in-cheek compared to the more serious resurrections of past characters and tropes, though when done right, it doesn't detract from the experience in any way. In the most recent chapters 3 and 4, a lot of the most prominent fan service comes from Mike, or rather, the 3 characters who pretend to be him. I already made an entire video talking about these silly little guys, but in essence they, along with their associated boss fight, are all references to various theories made up about the identity of Mike in the lead up to the release of Deltarune Chapter 3. The first Mike is just a generic design of a stumpy little microphone man. The second Mike is a cat with a Cheshire grin, referencing image_friend as well as other theories about Mike being a feline good luck charm. And the third Mike is a tall skinny cowboy, referencing the friend inside me theory which believed that Mike would be a homage to Toy Story's Woody. Their battle theme, Cat Swing, is basically just a big band jazz jumble of light motifs. The heavy emphasis on Spamton motifs is especially fitting, both thematically and fanservice wise, since Spamton was the only person who ever mentioned Mike prior to Chapter 3, and his incoherent dialogue was the only jumping off point for all of the community's absurd theories. Of course, the twist is that they're all just regular enemies pretending to be Mike. Since no one in-universe seems to know how Mike actually looks, acts or sounds, it's just a cute way for Toby to personally involve himself in the madness and lovingly acknowledge the community's obsession. These guys would already be top tier characters even if they were just one-off NPCs, but since they're residents of Castletown who also run a minigame hub for Chris, it's great that they get to stick around for future antics, something which has already been confirmed by Toby Fox. In the Winter 2025 newsletter, Toby teased a short scene of the Mikes and Tenor. To my knowledge, the 3 Mikes don't actually have official names, with the Deltarune wiki referring to them as Motormouth Mike, Cat Mike, and Cowboy Hat Mike, respectively. As such, a lot of people in the community prefer to call the Mikes by the minigames they offer: Batat, Jungler, and most infamously, Pluie. In fact, Pluie had been a meme in the Deltarune community since February of 2025, due to Toby's absolutely bizarre Blue Sky post updating his audience about development progress, so it makes sense that that name in particular was latched onto by fans. As a result, Toby thought it would be a funny idea for Cat Mike in the game to also want to be referred to as Pluie. Tenor even gets in on it, as he specifically wants Pluie, much to Motormouth Mike's annoyance. It's a funny scene, though I do feel like it's getting somewhat too self-referential. I can understand the meta-humor of referencing the audience's reactions to and theories surrounding the Mikes, but I do hope it doesn't become the sole focus of their comedy. I swear to God, Mr. Fox, if Tenor starts calling Motormouth Mike Batat, I'm coming over there to jongle your— Overall, I'm still of the opinion that Mike was never supposed to be a real character, seeing as their minigames and probably boss fights were basically last-minute inclusions to the game in order to add exclusive mechanics for the Nintendo Switch 2 port. As such, the Mikes are obvious fan service to the nth degree. They exist purely as a way for Toby to poke fun at the community, and yet I still believe that they are an excellent example of fan service done right, as they still contain a ton of substance as their own characters and can still be entertaining to players who weren't involved in the theory crafting. I enjoy watching YouTubers and streamers encounter these guys with complete bewilderment. Some understand the references and others don't, yet all of them leave the experience equally entertained, and in the end, that's all that matters. While a lot of fanservice can be good, what I really like is how Toby can use hype to subvert expectations and instead create moments of fan disservice. A core example of this is, well, everything about Papyrus, or rather, the complete lack of him. Despite almost every main monster from Undertale making an appearance already, Toriel, Sans, Undyne, Alphys, and Asgore, Papyrus still hasn't been seen on screen, with the only reference to his existence at all being the faint trousering of bones in the Skeleton Brothers' house, as well as Sans constantly procrastinating on Chris, or rather the player, getting to meet him. And those moments of dialogue are only in chapters 1 and 2. Papyrus isn't even mentioned in chapters 3 and 4. Papyrus's absence is especially apparent as in Undertale, he loved to make his presence known everywhere, and was one of the monsters most involved in the story, helping the human become friends with Undyne, helping Alphys through her issues, and inadvertently assisting Flowey in his plans to become a god. It's just so strange and confusing as to why the loud and bombastic skeleton still hasn't made an appearance. In fact, Papyrus's absence has been felt by the community to the extent that a semi-popular theory has formed that Papyrus is the Roaring Knight. While I don't think Papyrus is the knight, I do think he'll get some sort of grand reveal later down the line, and I have faith that Toby will do my boy justice. Furthermore, I like to think that the Snowgrave route is an aspect of Toby subverting our idea of fan service. The idea of 3 unique possible routes was one of the most well-known elements of Undertale, with the genocide route being the big boogeyman path where you kill everyone and fight the funny skeleton. I've already talked at length about the differences between the genocide route and the Snowgrave route, and you can check that video out if you want. But here's the gist of it. Undertale's genocide route is about slaughtering a whole population of living beings for the purposes of becoming physically stronger and increasing the human's capacity to cause harm, then ending the world so the player can move on to the next. Mirroring how some players try to do everything they can in a game at the expense of the characters within, and eventually discarding the game and playing something else once they're bored. The gameplay on this route is intentionally menial and drawn out as a commentary on the boring nature of XP grinding and how you are actively making your experience worse by choosing this path. On the other hand, Deltarune's Snowgrave route has you command another character to slaughter a whole population of living beings for the purpose of providing them with a different kind of strength. Mental strength. Stealing their resolve to mindlessly follow orders and proceed. Navigating this route is a lot less intuitive, requiring routine backtracking and the choosing of specific dialogue options, seeming more like some sort of creepypasta variation of the main game rather than its own established route. One of the main flaws in Undertale's genocide route, in my opinion, is that the message is supposed to be that there is no reason to go about doing it intentionally. However, the game literally provides a reason for the players to do so in the form of the route-specific Undying the Undying and Sans fights. Fortunately, players coming into Deltarune will receive no such reward, quote-unquote, as the final boss is just Spamton Neo again, except you only have Chris in your party, which just makes it arbitrarily more difficult. Furthermore, the genocide route for the most part has the tone of sorrowful apathy. The monsters are doing their best to escape an uncaring player who simply wants to see what happens when they kill everyone. On the other hand, Snowgrave route is much more of an emotional slow burn, where we as players get to experience the mental deterioration of Chris and especially Noelle as they both grapple against the player's control. In my opinion, that makes the Snowgrave route a subversion of what people would have expected of Deltarune's version of the genocide route, and Toby has done an excellent job of writing it this way. At the end of the day, what makes fanservice work or fail isn't the reference itself, but the intent and care behind it. Deltarune is packed with callbacks, motifs, and familiar faces, yet none of them exist purely to make the audience point at the screen and clap. Instead, Toby Fox consistently uses fanservice as a narrative tool to develop characters like Susie through Gerson, to recontextualize abandoned ideas through Spamton Neo, to poke fun at community obsessions with the Mikes, or to deliberately deny expectations through absences like Papyrus and Subversions like the Snowgrave route. Rather than treating Undertale as a checklist of things to reuse, Deltarune treats it as shared cultural memory. The references reward longtime fans without alienating newcomers, and when expectations grow too loud, Toby isn't afraid to twist them into something unsettling, tragic, or outright uncomfortable. That balance is why Deltarune's fan service rarely feels hollow. As future chapters release, it's clear that these callbacks aren't just winks to the audience, but building blocks for something larger. Whether Toby continues to indulge, subvert, or completely ignore fan expectations, one thing is certain: every reference is there for a reason, and that's what separates meaningful fan service from empty pandering. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. As I said earlier, I intend to make content more regularly this year, so be sure to stay notified. See you in the next video.